Rise, renew, reconnect. Welcome to From the Ashes, a podcast where every story ignites hope and healing. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give you a quick heads up. My guest Reed and I recorded this episode outdoors, so you might notice some sound distortion at times. Despite this, I encourage you to stick with it because this conversation is truly worth the listen. Reed is a remarkable individual and a friend of mine. He's the owner of Human Aeon, a wellness facility in Long Beach, and is not only a fellow capoeirista, but also a dedicated psychonaut and entrepreneur, and his journey into wellness is both inspiring and transformative. I really enjoyed recording this episode, so I hope that you stay tuned for this insightful conversation with Reed Wasser.
And the fire in the darkest night, the phoenix burns. It's ready for flight. Shadows may come, try to tear you apart, but you're the flame that...
Reed Wasser, thanks for being here today.
A pleasure.
Yeah, so we're going to dive pretty deep today into the
Okay.
story of you're from the ashes moment.
Mhm.
And let's just start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself. So what I know about you is probably only a small segment of who you are. I met you through capoeira.
Mhm.
So you do martial arts. You also have done Wim Hof workshops and you have trained with Wim Hof himself.
Mhm.
I know that you are the founder of Human Aeon, where we are right now, and you have your own philosophy on wellness and consciousness and how to spread that. And you do events and so much more. So
Yeah.
tell the audience a little bit about yourself. What do you want the world to know about you?
What do I want the world to know about me? Yeah, let's see. I'm born and raised in Long Beach, California. I came to age in the 90s when Long Beach was a very different place and witnessed a lot of really wonderful things. We had great art, great music at the time. A lot of really tragic events occurred in Long Beach just due to the climate of sort of where the city was at and where the world was at, the riots and all of that, and everything that happened in the 90s. I a I'm a seeker. I've always sought to find meaning in this existence and in being here in this life. Like you and I were talking about before we started recording, life is composed of a lot of experiences that are difficult, that cause suffering, and also obviously lots of experiences that bring joy. And for me, I'm someone that I'm always looking for meaning, for deeper meaning into why we're here. And that has always brought me a level of understanding and comfort and resonance and integration, with the world. And so for me, that's where all of my art, all of my business, what I want to create in the world is coming from.
Amazing. So I would like to ask you then, since you've always been a seeker, and I feel like I have been too, I feel like in my childhood, there were already kind of tendencies that I had that indicated like I was thinking differently. Do you
Mm.
remember any moments in your life early
Oh,
on that
yeah.
indicated that for you?
Yeah. Several moments. I remember when I was 9 years old, it was during summer break and just felt like days on days of nothing to do. We didn't have the internet. We had a couple channels on the TV and the streets to play with our friends in.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on the couch and I don't know how long I was there, but my mind went to this place of, I asked myself the question, who am I and why am I here? And I remember having this experience where I remember everything visually went into a void. And I shocked myself with this question. And I had no idea why I was asking it. I had no idea what was happening in my experience, but it felt like the entire world dissolved. And I don't remember how long I was there on the couch in this quasi-meditative experience. And I had never heard of any of my friends or nobody told me that they've had an experience like that.
Yeah.
It was years later that I read other accounts of meditators and psychonauts and experimenters with consciousness who had similar events. So I remember early on, I've always had this questioning, this inquisitive nature. And I've always been suspicious that there's something beyond our 3D physical plane existence.
Got it. Great.
Yeah.
I want to put in a little context because I did not grow up in Long Beach. So I grew up in Long Island, another side of the country
Yeah.
in the 90s. And so obviously, so I grew up in a very different place and where there was a lot of peace, but then also 9/11 happened to us, right? And so there was a lot in my environment that has shaped the way that I see things, the way that I question things and all of that. Can you give us a little bit of context of what Long Beach was like and why that was formative for you?
Yeah. So Long Beach, we had this crucible of music, punk rock, hip hop, and reggae music, or like they call it third wave ska, but we also like people really loved reggae music in Long Beach at the time. So I was born in 1980, so I was 10 in 1990 and 20 in 2000. So it was my teens basically.
Yeah.
So we had this great musical sort of like confluence of energies that really sort of we were from Long Beach was a thing because of music. But it was also a wild place. It was filled with gang violence everywhere. We had 5 major high schools and everyone got bussed everywhere. Everyone got put in different high schools. You didn't necessarily get put in the high school of your neighborhood. So because the city at the time or the school district wanted the high schools to be very diverse and represent all the different sides of Long Beach. And with that came a wonderful amount of culture and diversity, and also violence just seemed to like sort of seep in everywhere. There were drive-bys. I was in a class at Wilson High School. The teacher was named Erin Gruwell. And they made a movie about this class called The Freedom Riders with Hilary Swank.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in that class. And that movie is actually pretty true. I was expecting it to be like Hollywood hype, but if you watch that movie, it was exactly like how that movie portrayed it.
Okay.
Shootings on campus. We had race riots a couple times where people were like trying to burn down the school. People just had to get out of school. It was crazy. We loved it. Me and my friends loved it. It was an adventure.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of intense time to Long Beach. Things have changed since then.
Yeah.
Gentrification, real estate markets, politics, culture has changed in Long Beach, and it's mostly safer.
Mostly, yeah.
Mostly because of the way like gang violence has shifted. It was pretty wild back in the day. Snoop Dogg came from Long Beach.
Yeah.
I came from Long Beach. Lots of great punk bands came from Long Beach. And it was just a very interesting place.
You wouldn't know
Yeah.
because like I've only been here for like 4 years maybe. And so like when I walk past Wilson High School, I'm like, wow, this looks like a really nice place.
I know. They've since put uniforms on the kids and gated everything. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different. It's different now. But it's still, we still have elements of the past.
Yeah.
Just not quite like before. For better or for worse.
Would you say that that experience growing up provided you with a special type of resilience or way of thinking?
Yeah.
What would it be? Like what would that mindset be?
I would like to in a poetic way. To me, it bred a little bit of what the capoeirista, the capoeira practitioner, calls Malandragem, which is sort of a street philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's born from survival. And I will in no way assume that the Malandragem that develops here is, I don't know. I know that, for example, like my capoeira master, who I've studied under for a long time, he comes from Salvador Bahia, right? Decades ago. He grew up and he's in his mid or late 60s now. And it was a very wild place with lots of street violence.
Yeah.
And, all sorts of things happening. The capoeirista, from the experience of survival, cultivates a type of like awareness that's born from survival, but goes deeper than that. Yeah. And I think that when you get through difficult situations or wild situations like Long Beach in the 90s, or I'm not trying to make comparisons, or Salvador Bahia in the 70s or whatever,
Yeah.
it breeds a sort of like streetwise kind of mentality, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So then that brings me to the main topic of today is rising from the ashes.
Mm-hmm.
So from what I understand and what you've told us in your stories, especially through like the Wim Hof workshops and stuff, there was a period of life where you went through some really rough internal
Yeah.
struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to contrast our early lives where it seems like we were able to survive a lot
Mm-hmm.
and not be dragged down by the internal dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to tell your From the Ashes story. And I also want you to tell it from the perspective of maybe that journey from this like Malandragem mindset, and
Mm-hmm.
when that you felt like that no longer worked or there was a moment of defeat.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Malandragem mindset still works,
Okay.
and there's many iterations of it. I've had a few like rising from the ashes moments of my life. I'm actually going through one right now, to be honest. I tell my Wim Hof story, how I found Wim Hof Method and why I started practicing it when I teach those workshops. And that was in 2016. All three of my grandparents had died. I'd been through divorce, a bunch of difficult loss in my life. And so I had a business it was stressful. Being an entrepreneur is stressful. That I started with a business partner in Seattle. I was living in Long Beach. For the first 3 years of the business, my partner and our employees were up there and I was here, and I would go back and forth. I also had a couple other businesses that I was working on. So in 2016, I decided to move from Long Beach to Seattle, sort of to change my environment and also to focus on the business.
Yeah.
And me and my dog and Wolfie, who at the time was 7, and we moved up there, and it was dark and dismal, which I liked, but my body wasn't used to just like long, like months of darkness.
Yeah.
And cold. I had very few friends, if any, and I'm a very social person. I'm an ambivert,
Okay.
so I need time alone, but also like I get charged in community with the right people that I connect with. So I didn't really have that. I had capoeira, but like I wasn't close to anybody at the time. I had a very stressful business, employees and money things. And so it was like stress, no sunshine, no friends, isolated. And I thought I was just going to like grieving over a lot of loss. I was very close to my grandparents. And so things were different. I started to get depressed, and I started to show like psychosomatic symptoms of like mild autoimmune things like allergies and inflammation, and just, you know, I was in a serious struggle. My regular meditation practice, which I've had since I was a youngster, I mean, I'm a meditator, wasn't, it was there, but it wasn't working. My capoeira practice helps, but it wasn't enough movement. It's not enough. I mean, I believe that movement is crucial to physical and emotional and psychological health, as well as stillness. But I knew that I needed more. So I saw Wim Hof advertisements or in his story or whatever on social media. And I tried it because I had always wanted to learn Dumo, which is an ancient Tibetan practice that has some influence on the Wim Hof method. It's different, but there's similarities: cold exposure, breathing, meditation. And started doing the Wim Hof method practice, and things just cleared up immediately. I wasn't at rock bottom, but I certainly was really in a state of, there was a continuity to my suffering.
Yeah.
That I needed to shock out. And the exposure to cold, exposure to long periods of deep breathing, it cultivated like a renaissance in my inner life, in my meditative life. Things started to become clear again. And I attribute that to clearing out inflammation. I attribute it to cultivating alkalinity in my blood for consistent periods of time. And just the shock of the cold. really helped. That's one of my, you know, I don't know if I was at rock bottom, but I can definitely say that my experience is that most ascents in life and in levels of states of consciousness are preceded by descents.
Yeah.
You descend generally before you ascend, and whether intentionally or unintentionally. Like if you want to get in shape, what do? You go into the place where you need to work out, you descend into you intentionally suffer. It feels good. When you do it long enough, like you get past the suffering when you work out consistently, whatever you're doing. But there's always you have to get your ass out of bed, get to the place, the gym or the movement space or the capoeira class. And you have to like break out of the cycles of like feeling the resistance and then getting sore in your body or whatever it is. You have to descend before you ascend. Before you get into shape, you have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very basic example. I've done it several times in my life.
Yeah.
I sought for meaning and started looking at esoteric traditions in my early teens because my household fell apart, right? I grew up in a middle-class family. You would think, with all of the privileges that you can assume, but in that household and in many households, we suffer from, you know, psychological issues and mental unwellness and divorce and strife and whatever it may be. I moved out of my house when I was 15 and traveled the countryside. And I did it because I wanted to get out of the situation in school, which was like wild, dangerous, boring. Like there was no point for me to be in school. So I left school, I left my home, and I traveled and studied a lot and joined different schools, esoteric sort of mystical schools, looking for answers so I could figure out how to change my state and my environment, right? That was essentially the same reason I went to Wim Hof Method, essentially the same reason I started studying capoeira, the same reason I started studying meditation is because I believe that that human beings are endowed with the ability to naturally shift their experience and their state of consciousness through efforts, through practices. I'm okay with medicine. I think medicine is great.
Yeah.
Western medicine, Eastern medicine, everything has its place. But there's so much that we have so much ability to shift our state of consciousness, to choose, right? And to use our suffering to propel us into higher states of wellness, right? When I say state of consciousness, like I'm referring to mental, emotional, physical, and the unexplained things that we can experience that are difficult to explain, which we could call spiritual or mystical or metaphysical or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, I have a lot of questions. So I'm going to try to,
Sure.
I'll just grab the one that is
Yeah.
sticking out to me right now is that you say that you've done this many times in your life.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've done the same.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah. The thing is, the people who do this, they know that they can do it again. But there's always the first one.
Mhm.
Right. And some people never get to the first one. So I want to ask you, okay, first one thing that I want to ask you is, what was your first one, would you say? And what was the shift? And was it sudden? Do you remember having a conversation with yourself?
What was the first one? Well, it's hard to say. I've always had this, as long as I can remember, I've always had a yearning to go deeper and to understand life in a deeper way. And I think it's why I've always been attracted to art and music. I've always felt like since I was a kid, there's always been something about music and art where I'm like, whoever made that gets it.
Yeah.
They understand what I'm feeling. And I don't know about the first one. Maybe when I was 15 and I left home, maybe that was the first one. Because that's when I first took the small level of control that I realized I had over my life. And I made arrangements with the world around me and decided to walk on my own and to do my own thing. It was dangerous. It's like the path of the razor's edge. Yeah. I think Rumi used that term. And I still I still, conduct myself in that way in my life. I think that was probably the first time. And it was very difficult and a great adventure. And, you know, it it's what I won't say it's what made me who I am. I don't like to define who I am based on just external experiences, but it definitely created the character that I carry.
Yeah.
you know?
Yes.
Um, but I'm going through a period right now where I'm struggling and ready to rise from my ashes. My dog died in September, and my life has shifted a lot in the last couple of years externally. Well, since the pandemic, I lost one business. I started like a few more. Startups are wonderful, but not easy. It's an adventure it's a great story, but it's like when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it, it's like, oh, fuck. What are we doing?
Yeah.
I mean, you have profit and loss statements and balance sheets and employees and insurance and all of the different things that you don't talk about on Instagram.
Right.
And investors and bankers and expectations and everybody needs something. And, being an entrepreneur is generally comes with its discomforts and stressors. So juggling that with the loss of the sentient being, my dog, that was the closest to me by far in the last 15 years, right? He's my family, my familiar companion every day. We slept in the same room, and I mean, he took me on walks every day. I didn't take him on walks,
Yeah.
and so my routine, everything is just like, whoa, like he saw me through the death of my grandparents' divorce, highs and lows, the loss of my business, the pandemic, all of these things. It's been me and Wolfie. And so I haven't experienced, like, grief is a great teacher, grief and loss. And that's, I went to an AA meeting with some friends for the first time a couple weeks ago because I've heard of it, I've read about it, but I've never gone to like see how it operates.
Yeah.
And so they're all talking about rock bottom. I've never experienced the type of rock bottom that would bring someone to AA. I mean, I enjoy my drinks and I've had my times. I'm a psychonaut. I love psychedelics. And I definitely abused those substances in my life before. But I've always also just had a solid handle and a healthy relationship for the most part.
Yeah.
With drugs, alcohol, all those things. A lot of my friends growing up that I grew up with have not had healthy relationships. And so I wanted to like understand the technology in 12 steps.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to read a little bit more. And I think it's a very interesting psychological technology. I want to understand. I have a lot of friends that has helped.
Yeah.
Right. And I like to understand all of the different techniques and methods out there. That's one that I never studied. So I was there and they're all talking about rock bottom, rock bottom. I'm like, I don't think I've experienced it quite like that. I don't want to. I don't think I need to. I suffer. I don't, I don't like to talk about it because like Bob Marley said, every man thinks that his burden is the heaviest. And I assume, having spent 15 years in the capoeira world and having grown up and seeing people who really suffer, right? Who don't have a pot to piss in and who are desperate. I feel like my suffering is best told through art because I'm very grateful for all of the opportunities and the community and, everything that I've been able to rely on, ancestors, parents, friends, teachers, that like, really, what do I have to complain about? Does that make sense?
It does.
But
Uh-huh.
I still own my suffering.
Yeah.
And for example, like it may sound silly to some people who never had a dog, but the loss of my dog, it's the shattering of a universe. And the pain and loss that I walk with is really intense. And I'm at a place right now in my life where I'm actually struggling to work with that energy. It's become it's a difficult grieving is no matter who you are or where you live or where you come from, grieving and loss is an unavoidable like uh, teacher. It's a teacher in life. Yeah.
I think one thing to really understand is that the greatest suffering you will ever experience is the one that you own. It's the
Right.
one that you have, or you will never have another person's burden. And
Mhm.
um, there are so many people in this world and so many ways to experience the world. It's
Mhm.
like hard. I feel like it's actually hard to compare like who's suffering more.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it is an internal experience.
Mhm. Well, I mean, there's different types of suffering.
Well, there's pain.
There's physical suffering, emotional suffering, mental suffering, spiritual suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah, physical pain. It's hard to compare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to compare. But I've traveled the world. I've had the blessing of being able to travel the world a lot. And in a conventional way, in a physical way, there's a lot of people that suffer more than I do. In it just like a conventional, like you can't deny it. And also there's a lot of people that I feel like I suffer more than. And yeah, I think comparing detract, no matter what, comparing is going to detract from compassion. And if compassion is important, then then comparison doesn't have much of a place, yeah, in that relationship with the world. And for me, compassion is important.
Yeah.
Having compassion.
Very important.
Yeah, considering others before, at least maybe not before I consider myself, before or after. Time has nothing to do with it. Just remembering to consider others and that I don't necessarily know what they're going through or how they're suffering,
Yeah.
and respecting that. I mean, it's the first noble truth of the Buddha. It's first, yeah, that everyone that lives is going to experience suffering. Yeah. I think it's important to remember that. And also to like, there's an opportunity there. I think that we're all going to suffer and we could suffer intentionally or consciously or unintentionally. When we choose suffering for a greater purpose, I mean, going back to just the metaphor of movement and exercise.
Yeah.
And you choose to suffer in that way because there will be suffering through long periods of practice. And there's something on the other side of that that's really amazing, feeling healthy, feeling endorphins, feeling like you're at home in your physical body, feeling like you could move in any direction.
That's empowerment.
It's empowerment. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I have to remember that, like this place, Human Aeon, which is a place to practice breathwork, meditation, movement, contrast therapy, which is called a need exposure, and any technique for the elevation of consciousness. 5 parts that right now I'm like trying to run it as a business. I'm trying to make it a viable business and operate the city and the politics, the money and this and that and all the things that actually seem for me to practice. And that's like, I don't think that it's a cure to my grief. I don't think that it can cure it. I don't think that it can cure, those practices can cure, old traumas or old pain. But I think that it can put us in a state to where we can work with that energy that we carry and work with the pain and the suffering, whether it's emotional. I mean, it can definitely cure some physical ailments.
Yeah.
Just going in ice water every day can cure certain physical ailments. I don't think it's a cure all, but I think that it can do a lot for the body.
Yeah.
But when it comes to grieving and when it comes to the inner pain that we all carry to some degree, whether it's the loss of a loved one or a difficult upbringing or whatever it might be, these practices that I have to remember to do every day, no matter how we're feeling to some degree, cultivate states where we are free enough to work with the pain or the suffering that we're carrying in a more conscious way.
I would say definitely for me, that has been true.
Yeah.
Coming here and doing the ice bath in the morning,
Mhm.
because I suffer from a lot of anxiety and low self-esteem, self-doubt, and I'm trying to do some big things.
Mhm.
And, those types of beliefs can really get in the way of my day-to-day functioning.
Mhm.
And this is a really good reset to there's just a clearing.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that I don't feel bad about myself sometimes. It just means that the baseline for me is elevated more.
Mhm.
And there's a way of operating I can access where it's like, I don't have to be bogged down by my own stories.
Mhm.
If I can reset my nervous system a little bit
Yeah.
each day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that when we're in states of physical suffering, the blood is a little acidic. We're carrying a little extra lactic acid, CO2 in the body. When the body's not free to move in different directions because of not training, movement, and injury and whatever. When we're in physical suffering, we're carrying around that type of pain, it's very difficult to tell ourselves in our psyche, in our subconscious, any other story other than we're suffering. When you go into the ruminating in mind, when you're in a suffering state, the you hear this ticker tape or this broken record of old stories that are sad, painful ass stories that everybody has.
Yeah.
But when you shift your chemistry, and it's so simple because nature has so many of the ways that we can just naturally shift our chemistry, then there's a different hormonal cocktail, different hormonal matrix. The nervous system is not stuck in just some low-lying sympathetic fight or flight state. The cytokine storms, or the small amounts of cytokines and cortisol and the stress hormones and the inflammatory responses, are downregulated. In that state, we can start to choose what story we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves a different story.
Yeah.
We literally choose a different lens in that moment, right, to experience the world and our inner world, the moment in. And I think from there, from that state, we can choose the level of consciousness that we want to reside in. And there's a story that comes with that. There's a story that we tell ourselves with every state of consciousness that we experience. If you listen in any moment, there is some story that we are telling ourselves about the world and about our past, about our future. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, it's when you first get to sit down to meditate and you're uncomfortable and you're moving and your mind won't stop thinking, you can't concentrate. If you listen in that moment, if you observe deep enough, you'll hear a story. And at the end of your meditation, after your breath work, after you've done all the things and you've experienced like some freedom from it in concentration, absorption states, there's like a different story that's happening. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It happens to me on a day-to-day basis.
Day-to-day
Just like,
basis.
because I do meditate and I do
Right.
these things, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's cultivating the awareness is the important thing, because otherwise you would just default to your
The
story.
default.
Yeah,
The default story.
yeah, the one that runs your entire life most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think the program is so much of it. And I don't think that we can just like strong arm the story and change it like through force. It doesn't work that way. I think it takes effort, it takes continuity to practice. But like you said, the core of it is being aware of it.
Yeah.
It's like quantum science has proven when that particles react differently when they're being observed in an experiment. Consciousness, awareness changes things. Just being aware of something changes things. We may not know exactly how or why, right? I think science and spirituality will converge at that question at some point. But certainly through continuity of observation, self-observation, continuity of awareness changes everything and gives us it opens a door to a higher level of consciousness or to a deeper state of well-being.
That's so rad. Yeah. All right. So I want to ask, to wrap up this conversation, I want to ask, because part of what I feel like you are trying to do, especially with Human Aeon, is to encourage an environment where we do cultivate awareness so that we can start to shift the collective consciousness, which is a part of what I also am trying to do with everything that I do with Phoenix and whatnot. And it's proving to be, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Huge undertaking because of this. It's the internal dialogue that at the end of the day is up to the one person to change, right? We can't force another person to shift their mind. So where do you, in your work, where is your starting point in helping someone do that? What conditions are you creating?
Yeah. So first thing I have to do to myself, and just that I notice influences the environment around me. I'm not always there. I struggle. But this place, having this environment definitely contributes to cultivating a community where people can be inspired to practice. And then obviously sharing the practices with people without, definitely don't believe in forcing people at all. I think it's just like you create the environment, you share the practices and try to do it in a way and do it in a language that is attractive to people and inviting and is clear and simple. I think breathwork is a great way to really introduce people to it, because if you lead the breathwork correctly, then on the first practice, people can experience a lot of relief. When your blood goes alkaline from mild respiratory alkalosis and you have shifted your nervous system into a literal flow state somewhere between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
Somewhere I think in polyvagal theory, they call it the dorsal vagal. I don't remember.
I have to go back to my
Yeah.
notes.
But
yeah.
when people experience that chemical state naturally, right? I mean, they're high on their own supply, of Wim Hof likes to say.
Yeah.
And it's very inspiring to experience that, even if it's just for a couple hours. I like to give people breath work as the gateway into that, because you can't really deny that feeling,
Yeah.
And it's easy to get there through breath work, through breathing. Air is very easy, like the old elements theory, air, fire, water. Air is very easy, but it gets everywhere. It's very similar to space. It's not space. It fills space, but it's very subtle and very powerful. We sustain ourselves on it. And when you shift the way that when you shift the way you eat over time, over a couple of weeks or whatever, if you've really radically changed your diet, start intermittent fasting, whatever you do, or start eating like shit for just a couple of weeks, you're going to have a very different experience of the world, right?
Yeah.
We nourish ourselves 2-3 times a day, unless you stack, right? With food. Air is nourishing ourselves all the time. You could go without food for weeks, without water for days. Air, you can't go without air for minutes before you expire.
Yeah.
And when you change, even if just for a few hundred breaths, when you change the way you nourish your body and the way you nourish your psyche, your state changes rapidly. The only things more subtle than air when it comes to nourishment are impressions. So 3 types of nourishment for the human being.
Yeah.
Food and water is the most dense, and it takes the most time to break down, digest it, right? Air is the second. It's less dense, obviously, than food. And we nourish ourselves on it constantly through 20,000, 25,000 breaths a day. more subtle, less dense than air. The most subtle form of nourishment is the type of nourishment that we receive through our five senses, light and sound. And it is constantly impressing itself upon our psyches through our five senses, even while we're sleeping, from moment to moment. We don't go for one moment without impressions. And that's another form of nourishment. So the environment that we're in, anything that we experience, smell, taste, touch, see, hear, is going to shift our state, whether we like it or not. Turn on a heavy metal album, see how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
A hip hop album, see how it makes you feel. Classical music, see how it makes you feel. Capoeira music, see how it makes. That's just one type of impression, right? Change your entire environment. When you're in a completely different environment, your psyche is nourishing itself off of different impressions.
Yeah.
And that influences your psychological state. Impressions are food. So when you're like scrolling all day, that's good. That's one type of nourishment. Yeah. When you're in like a temple space like Human Aeon, it's a different type of nourishment. I'm on a nice tangent, but a great way to introduce people to other states of consciousness. I'd like to say higher states of consciousness, but we could just say states of consciousness that seem to have with it like more well-being, less suffering, more inspiration, more deeper connection, deeper integration. I think that I don't teach or like offer workshops or advice when it comes to diet. I think there's a lot of people that are better at that than I. I mean, I barely know what works for me. I also like to enjoy myself in food as well. But that's very important though.
Mm-hmm.
And that will change your life if you change the way you eat. Change the way you breathe, right? It will also greatly change your life. Learn how to breathe your nervous system into different states for different reasons will change your life. And then when you understand how impressions and your environment and the people that you're around and the type of art that you consume will shift your psyche, your psychological state rapidly, right? It's like about nourishment.
It is. And it's not really tangent because that's exactly what I teach in Ayurveda as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's diet, lifestyle, five sense therapies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the yoga and the pranayama and whatever.
Yeah.
What else? But it's very true
Mm-hmm.
is that everything that we take in is going to shape us, which is why there is you at the core, but you, as soon as you're conceived in this universe, are subject to everything too. And there's no separation, really.
And we mimic the environment that we're in and people all around, whether we like it or not. Like mimetics. Our psyches mirror our environments. And it's important to like consider that when we choose who we're around, where we go, what we do, because everything deposits itself in our psyches and in our cells. I mean, our cells carry the memory of our experiences. Our genes, epigenetics, carries the memories of our parents and our ancestors. And all of the impressions and all of their memories and all of their experiences get deposited into our genetic code. I think that we can free ourselves from, science and the studies of epigenetics, like we can turn on and off different genes, right?
Yeah.
It takes work though.
Oh, absolutely.
And we get lucky or it takes a while. I think it really takes some effort and be able to do it intentionally.
Yeah. So let's wrap up. I want to hear if you could speak directly to the person that you want to address with your work. What would you say to them now?
The person that I would like to address, like through Human Aeon.
Through Human Aeon. What is a message you want them to hear?
That most of our ailments and most of our suffering can be addressed by consistent, simple, feel-good practices that come from ancestral traditions all around the world, ancient ancestral traditions, very simple, that come built into the human machine, like breathing, movement, stillness, hot and cold, consciousness, awareness, those practices which have been studied by modern science for the last couple decades that have been verified without a bunch of like mysticizing, without a bunch of like, making things more than what they are. Yeah. Which if that's what people want to do, that's cool, but that's not what I'm doing, right? I try to keep things in a very simple language. We can do very simple practices that are fun and that feel good by ourselves or in groups that can address a lot of the ailments that face us today. Autoimmune disorders, depression, anxiety, whatever it might be, weak immune systems, weak bodies, right? And I think it's okay to ebb and flow. I think it's all right to like, a lot of people get down on themselves for where they're at. It's natural. Yeah. It's natural, especially like in this strange, disconnected, you know, society that we find ourselves in. It's absurd. We live in an absurd world of straight lines and strange hierarchies and weird laws and weird politics and weird stories that get manipulated by media vultures and business interests to pit people against each other. And the stories don't even make sense. Some of them make sense. Oppression we should not tolerate. And that's happening today. We shouldn't tolerate genocide. There are things that we should not tolerate. But like the inability for people to communicate right now, non-violently. There's like physical violence, but there's also like violence just in communication.
Oh, absolutely.
Making people get defensive, playing with, mind games. And it's like really absurd. And we don't have to participate in that. We can participate in a different form of dialogue with ourselves and with others. But not if we're like spinning on a broken record in a loop. Yeah. In an angry, suffering loop. We have to free ourselves from that first, at least for a moment.
Yeah.
So I think that shocking the body through breathing, shocking the body through cold, and, detoxing through sauna and sitting in stillness till it hurts and then past the pain, moving for long periods of time, exercise. These are like basics. Spending community time with just good people you may or may not know who are doing the same things without a framework of like people telling you what to believe or what to think. Like, I don't really tolerate that here. I may share my beliefs about the universe, but I certainly don't expect or want anyone to take it on just because that's my experience.
Yeah.
That's silly to me. I think that we should share things with each other that we have used to feel better and to feel higher states of consciousness and clarity and integration. And if they work for your friends, cool. And if they don't, cool. Everybody has a different temperament. We don't take all the same medicine. We don't all have the same diet. We don't fall in love with the same person. We all have our own individual lives to live. So fuck what someone else believes or thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's figure out what works to feel better in the moment and to feel connected. And then it's choose your own adventure story. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's perfectly said. We could probably talk on and on, but we'll wrap it up today. I'll probably have to interview you again at some point.
Sure, anytime.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Reed.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.